I'm
Yeah,
also
it
surprised
was.
that arms warriors weren't like more utilized in this tier. I guess the first reason is like one-armed bandit, just the last phase damage check just ended up not existing in progression. But like I
Yeah.
saw two going into this tier because we didn't have a lot of this. Like Riku didn't play this last tier, and our like second warrior is also our monk player, and monk was just crazy. So like we didn't really have a second warrior option, and that was like a huge risk. And we were aware of it, but we were just like, it would make sense for anyone else to be our second warrior except for one of our monk players, basically. And we saw two dedicated execute phases for, I believe, the first time in like, it's been like 3 or 4 years since a boss phased at a percentage in execute phase to where like, and it's like a timed burn. Like that's really, those used to happen all the time, and they haven't had them for a very long time. Like bosses now phase based off of like timers, to where like basically when you're looking at killing a boss in P3, basically the damage from 100 to 30 or 60 to 30 or 70 to 30, like all of that damage is relevant to where it devalues execute classes. But how the game used to be and how the game was kind of designed for these two bosses was like, sometimes bosses getting to the last phase is easy, and then the last phase is insanely hard, and it turns out you just need like 3 or 4 of this extremely niche spec that just happens to do more execute than everyone else by a lot, and that's how you kill these bosses. And it looked like One-Armed Bandit and Muggsy could have been this, but it ended up just not really being the case, which is lucky for us, I think, that we didn't need the arms warriors. But
I would say definitely a bit bizarre that they had not one but just two bosses with this, because it definitely looked like they shifted their mentality or their philosophy, design philosophy, towards. I think maybe it was Sarkareth the first boss where they kind of started doing this. I think where basically any damage you do in phase 1 counts. I mean, they did put a threshold, but it was not relevant for Raised World First. I think that's when they started doing it, and it seemed like they kept doing it. I mean, Firak did have a hard phase 1, but the phase 2 to phase 3 was similar to Sarkareth.
well, I know when they stopped doing it majorly was Tomb of Sargeras, or not Tomb of Sargeras, sorry, totally wrong. Sanctum of Domination. Like Sanctum of Domination, every boss was like defined by damage stops and like pushing at certain phases, and then like after that they reduced the amount of like bosses are phasing at certain percentages by a huge amount. But even in Sepulchre, you still saw a fair amount of them. But you're right. It was like Razageth, P1 had a definitive percentage.
Oh, yeah.
But then P2 to P3 was all, you were not hitting those damage caps. So that was all like relevant damage. Yeah, so it was like Razageth kind of, but you're right. Since Sarkareth, it's been every single end to second to last boss has been the damage has mattered the whole fight.
Yeah, and I think, is it like a disaster if a not end boss has this? Not really, but I would still argue I don't see a reason to do this. I think it's just bad. I mean, think of like even for farm, right? Or tons of other guilds that are progressing the boss. Like we can get away with, saying DPS stop, then we get the kill, and then we move on. But just the sheer amount of people that must have wiped or have this annoying thing being called on TeamSpeak or Discord, whatever people use, DPS stop. I mean, these are words that just kill your vibe.
It kills everything.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I would argue they should never do this, personally, on any boss. I hate to bring it up as an example, but I do think Final Fantasy XIV does a way better job at this. In what regard? In the regard of, if you're afraid that the end of the fight, like you want people to experience it, right? Because it's like something cool. In Final Fantasy, what they do is the last 30 seconds of the fight, the boss just stands still and does some AoE damage, and then it enrages. Do that instead, right? Like if you're afraid that people, if you don't do this, people are just gonna blast through the boss and they won't even see the second phase, because like let's say one-armed. Oh, we just kill him in phase 1 then, I guess, lol. Then just make it so that, or do it like the other bosses, right? Like you can put it at such a low percentage, like at 20%, he should phase automatically, right? Something that is not reachable the first time you're killing the boss. That would be my argument. I think it's just bad, personally, and there are other ways to design bosses, I think. I mean, maybe they were experimenting a bit with this, but I do
I mean,
not think they should do bosses.
I think it was part of a larger. I think you're definitely right. They had a design philosophy shift, but I think it was to just allow more niches in the game in general. Like, here's another one. So they brought Execute back, really in this raid, or at least design wise. It didn't actually end up being the case, but design wise, they were like emphasizing an execute phase for the first time in years. When was the last time you stacked daughters on a boss where like there was multiple spread out targets and the best way to solve that was to bring in dot classes? Bro, it's been forever, right? Until
I mean, famously, I think I'm thinking Shadow Priest, right?
yeah,
Was what Twins Court, I think.
yeah, Queen's Court and then Zakul. They were like one of them was crazy on Zakul, two bosses right after each other. But yeah, I mean BFA dots were good. So that it was after BFA where they killed them. But basically, dots have been dead for like basically since BFA. Like the classes where that was their niche. Like if there was multiple targets that were spread out, you just brought an Affliction Lock, a Shadow Priest, and Moonkin, and they just shit on everybody. That's been dead. Obviously, Moonkin has the Starfall very specific niche thing. But like as far as dots were concerned, that has been a thing in the game for a long time and has been gone. I feel like in this tier they intentionally brought it back. Like they've made a very conscious effort to be like, we want a dot fight to be a thing again, and that was the thing. So they brought Execute back, they brought dot back. Dude, Moonkins, we thought Moonkins were terrible this raid. We never wanted to play them for any reason, but we still had to gear like 4 of them in splits just because Styx was a boss. So we were like preparing Splat to main Moonkin, Goop to main Moonkin, and then multiple other people play Moonkin just until Styx died, and then play the classes they were going to play for the raid after that, just because of that boss, which actually ended up being pretty accurate because they made the boss pretty hard. Like you had to do that. But that
Yeah,
I think that's on purpose. I don't know. I feel like this raid, they like it had to be on purpose that they wanted to make sure that each individual like niche, or at least ones that haven't been used in a while, were built in the raid. We'll definitely be able to tell by next raid if there's some very obvious execute phases, or if they keep dots at their current strength. Where like because bro, you didn't play Shadow Priest for like multiple raids. You know, you always were like preparing them, and then they were never good enough. Bro, just make dots good, and they're gonna be played every single raid.
Yeah, I think specifically on Styx as well, I would say it's also, I don't know if I would call it, like dot classes. I wouldn't say that's the good niche there. It's more like just spread out AoE, or, like just all chaos going around, and you just, I mean, Moonkin is kind of like the goats doing this. I mean, Shadow Priest can do decent, but not as good as Moonkins. So that is, I don't know. I think there's been other examples where you just want this kind of, there's just some ads all around and you just need to blast them kind of quick. But yeah, I mean, specifically one-armed for sure looked quite intentional, because especially, I don't know if you did the math there, but on PTR, when we were testing that boss, the boss had certain HP and then the ads had certain HP. And then when the live version went out, they buffed both, but they buffed the ad HP significantly more.
Yeah.
Compared to the boss HP. So that looked pretty intentional, because you can have an equally as hard fight by increasing the boss health more and reducing the health of the ads.
Yeah, you still have to be efficient with the ads either way, but making the ads health higher makes it something you have to like swap to and burn to where like those classes just thrive.